Good morning, students. How are you? I hope you are all safe and sound. It's been more than 2 months that we have not seen each other, you have not been to school, but still we are connected. That's e learning, that's technology. Still, you people are able to learn from us every day. Still, we are able to teach you people every day. That is the initiative of Cambridge International School, the SUA. That is e-learning. And I really wish this e-learning could help you in all possible spheres. And economics is newly introduced in grade 9th. I know you people are still not very comfortable with the subject matter of economics. So I want to again tell you why this economics has been introduced separately in social science in grade 9. Till grade 8 you have been studying economics as a subject with political science, but now you have matured enough and grown up that you are having economics separate from political science. Economics is all about economic activities, economic problems, economic issues in an economy. Economic activity means all those activities, all that work that we do in order to earn money, earn income. Like I am teaching you, I will be getting salary in return. That will be termed as economic activity, right? So in economics we are all going to study economic activities. And if I talk about economic issues, then in grade 9 you have economic problems such as poverty, unemployment, food security in India. These all are the economic issues of India, economic problems of an economy. So by studying economics, you will be able to understand Indian economy as a whole in a better way. That is why in total you have 4 chapters in your textbook of NCERT of economics. The first chapter that we have covered is the story of village Palampur. You know, India is an agricultural country. Majority of the population of India is dependent upon farming for their livelihood. That is why we included chapter 1, the story of village Palampur. Palampur is an imaginary village in which main economic activity is farming. So that you will be able to understand Indian agriculture in detail. The second chapter that we have done from NCERT book is people as resource. This is the chapter that enables you people to know about significance of education and healthcare facilities in order to grow, in order to make India a developed country. That is why we studied in detail role of education and health in detail, so that you can increase the quality of population, human resource. That is how you can make more goods and services in a country so as to increase its economic growth. So these were the chapters that were linked with economic activities. Now we had started chapter 3, poverty as a challenge. Poverty is a problem. Actually, poverty is an economic problem which is linked with every fourth Indian. We can say that poverty is all around us. We can see poor people when we walk on the road every day. So that is why now we have started studying economic problem, and that is the main problem of India, which is poverty. And in chapter poverty as a resource, we have just covered few topics. Now, before starting today's topic, let's revise what we have learned about poverty in our previous video lesson. In poverty, first I gave you introduction, in which I stated that poverty trends in India and the world are illustrated through the concept of the poverty line. And in introduction, I told you very clearly that in our daily life we come across many people who are poor or who you think are poor. They could be people who are not having shelter. They could be people who live in slum areas, people who are working on daily wage, right? Or people who are living in villages but are landless laborers. These all people come under the category of poor, and these are the people whom you come across every day. There could also be beggars in poverty line, na? So we see poverty and poor people all around us. In fact, if I talk about data of 2011-12, then it is quite clear that 270 million Indians, or you can say 27 crore Indians, live under poverty. In other words, you can simply say that India has the largest concentration of the poor in the world. That is included in the introduction portion of this chapter. Now, after introduction, what we discussed was two typical cases of poverty. We studied into detail what kind of poverty you see in urban areas and in rural areas. In urban areas, if we talk about Ram Saran, then Ram Saran is the one who was working as a daily wage laborer in a wheat flour mill in Jharkhand and was just earning rupees 1500 a month. With this 1500 rupees, he was sustaining his family of 6, his wife, 4 children, and his old parents who are living still in their native village. And if we talk about what kind of basic facilities do Ram Saran availing, then it's miserable to notice that Ram Saran lives in one room rented house. In one room they are living together, husband, wife and 4 children, and that's too built of bricks and clay tiles. And if we look at his wife, Santa Devi, she works as a maid to earn another rupees 800 a month, so that they can manage meal of dal and rice twice a day. But they could never earn that much so that they have enough food for all of them. His elder son was also working as a helper in a tea shop and earned around rupees 300 a month. None of the children were going to school. They did not have enough money that they could send their children to school. So basically, they were living without basic amenities of life. They were not having education facility, and if they fell sick, they could not have access to health care. They could not get good treatment. So they were living without health facilities also. And if we talk about clothes, they just had 2 pairs of hand-me-down clothes each. Shoes were a luxury to them. So this was the case of a poor person, Ram Sarwan, who lives in a city. And the other case was of Lakha Singh, who was living in a small village near Meerut in Uttar Pradesh. His case is not so different. He is even more poorer than Ram Saran. actually what he was earning after working hard for the whole day. He just got rupees 50 for a day. But that is also not so often. For most of the time, he used to get payment in kind. Few kilograms of wheat or dal or even vegetables, right? For working in the field of big farmers. The family of 8 cannot always manage 2 square meals a day. Lakha was the only one who was earning in the house. Because his father passed away 2 years ago due to lack of medication as he was suffering from TB. And like his father, now his mother is also working, suffering from the same disease, TB. Actually, after studying these two cases of poverty, we could relate poverty to the following issues. Like the reason of their poverty was landlessness. If they could have owned some piece of land, their situation would be different. They could manage to arrange meal, at least twice a day. Then unemployment. Lakha is not able to find a regular job. Same is the case with Ram Saran, who was working as a daily wage laborer in mill floor. Then size of families. Size of families is very large, 6 to 8. And the person who is earning bread for the family is just 1 or 2. Then illiteracy. Education can turn the things for them. But both of them had not been to school even once. Then they both could not get enough food so that they can have good health. And if they are suffering from diseases like TB, they people are not able to afford treatment. And these are the issues that you can relate with poverty. Mahatma Gandhi once said that India would be considered independent only when the poorest of its people become free from human suffering. Human suffering is the outcome of poverty, human poverty. After studying these two case studies, we headed towards indicators of poverty. Which are the indicators which highlight the seriousness and helplessness of poverty? In which social indicators play a majority and vital role. Social indicator includes illiteracy level, lack of general resistance due to malnutrition, lack of access to health care, lack of job opportunities, lack of access to safe drinking water, sanitation, etc. All these basic facilities of life are just not available to all these poor people of India or even of world. Except social indicators, we have economic indicators that are also important to study. Economic indicators only include levels of income and consumption. People who are having low level of income and consumption are considered poor. And when people are not able to satisfy their basic needs of life, they people get excluded from the society. That is why we say social exclusion is the outcome of poverty as well as the cause of poverty. Now, what do you mean by social exclusion? Social exclusion means when you have to live with poor people only, if you are poor, and excluded from enjoying social equality of better of people in better surroundings. You people are not able to get along with non-poor people. Social exclusion is a process through which individuals or groups are excluded from facilities, benefits, and opportunities that rest of the people are enjoying. A typical example in India of social exclusion is caste system. Casteism is prevalent in this modern India too, where people belonging to certain castes are excluded from equal opportunities. Social exclusion may lead to having a low income, in fact, very low income. When you people are not able to live with non-poor people, how would you increase your income? How would you get better job? How would you be non-poor? You will be poor forever. So tendency to be poor will be more when is the case of social exclusion is considered. Not only social exclusion, actually, there is one more concept, that is vulnerability. Actually, chances of people to be poor, to remain poor, will be more when you belong to certain communities, when you are certain kind of people. That is called vulnerability to poverty. Such as people of backward class, or individuals such as widow or physically handicapped person, they have more chances of becoming or remaining poor in the coming years. Actually, dear students, vulnerability is determined by the options available to different communities. If people of backward class or people who is physically challenged get good opportunities in life, have better alternative options like education, health, job opportunities, then they will be non-poor soon in future. But when the people are not having any kind of facility or options with them, they will be poor forever. So vulnerability to poverty will be more if they don't have adequate options with them. Actually, these people will not able to face any kind of risk. It is analyzed that on the basis of greater risks these groups face at the time of natural disasters like tsunami, earthquake, etc., additional analysis is made of their social and economic ability to handle these risks. So this was all about vulnerability. Let's read out the topics that we are going to study in today's video lesson, which is poverty line, poverty estimates, and vulnerable groups. Let's talk about poverty line first. Students, now think carefully. How can you say, or on what grounds you can categorize people into poor and non-poor? How can you say that a particular person is poor and you are not poor? What is the criteria of defining poverty or of defining poor people? This is the point of discussion in this lesson. That is the poverty line. Poverty line is simply a point which divides poor and non-poor people. Actually, poverty line is a common method used to measure poverty, simply based on income or consumption levels. A person is considered poor if his or her income or consumption level falls below a given minimum level necessary to fulfill basic needs. In simple terms, you can say that a person will be considered poor when his income level or spending level is less than the minimum level set by the government. And that minimum level is set by the government by taking into consideration basic needs. If that person is not earning that much income and that person is not spending that much money so that he can fulfill his basic requirements of life, then he will be considered poor. This poverty line indicates the income level which is just sufficient to buy the basic minimum quantity of food required. For many times I just said basic requirements of life, basic amenities of life, basic facilities of life. Now, which are the basic facilities? Actually, basic facilities are different at different times and in different countries. If I think of India, which is a developing country, then basic facilities are also different as compared to USA, America, which is well developed country, established country. In other words, what is necessary to satisfy basic needs is different at different times and in different countries. Therefore, poverty line may vary with time and place. That means poverty line of India may be quite lower as compared to poverty line of America. Each country uses an imaginary line that is called poverty line. Okay? Each country uses an imaginary line that is considered appropriate for its existing level of development and its accepted minimum social norms. Don't get into so much complication. I will simplify for you. That is, if we think about USA, if you cannot afford house and car, I'm talking about owned car or owned house, then you will be poor, right? Since car is a basic necessity in USA. But if we think about purchasing car in India, then car will be considered luxury in India. So in basic facility, if a person is not able to buy car in India, that person will not be poor. Since car is not basic facility in India, car is a luxury in India. What do we count? In basic facilities of India, we count basic facility of education, basic facility of clean drinking water, basic facility of sanitation, right? Basic facility of 2 square meals a day, right? These are all basic facilities of India, which is quite low as compared to car and house in USA. But the person who is not able to buy house or car is considered poor in USA but not in India. If that person is able to arrange meal for themselves, good clothes for themselves, if that person is able to buy good clothes, education, health facilities for him and his family, then that person will not be non-poor. He will be poor in India, but in USA there is no comparison at all. Therefore, while determining the poverty line in India, we consider the following things into mind. A minimum level of food requirement. Are you able to afford meals twice a day? Clothing. Are you able to buy good clothes for you? Footwear. Are you barefoot or you are able to buy footwear for yourself? Fuel and light, educational and medical requirement, etc. If you fall ill and you are able to purchase treatment for you, medical care for you, then you will be non-poor. But if you are not able to satisfy these basic 5 needs, food, clothes, shelter, education, health, and 2 more, safe drinking water and sanitation. If you cannot afford these 7 requirements of life, then you will be poor. Otherwise you won't. You will be considered non-poor. Therefore, while determining poverty line in India, these 7 basic requirements are determined for subsistence. Let's talk about India and its poverty line. How do you find or determine poverty line in India. The present formula is regarding food requirement. That is, we estimate poverty line based on the desired calorie requirement. Food items such as cereals, pulses, vegetable, milk, oil, sugar, etc. together provide these needed calories. The calorie needs vary depending on age, gender, and the type of work that a person does. In other words, calories required by farm laborer is quite more as compared to newborn baby. Therefore, calorie requirements depend on age, right, and gender. Girls cannot eat and need not to consume calories as equal with boys. And if a person is doing physical work, if a person is working on a farm, if a person is a rickshaw puller, then calorie intake requirements will be more as compared to people who are not putting that much physical effort. Now let's talk about what is the expected average calorie requirement in India. The accepted average calorie requirement in India is 2400 calories per person per day in rural areas. That means if a person is consuming 2400 calories in a day in village, that person is non-poor. And the same requirement in urban areas is of 2100 calories per person per day. That means in urban areas, if a person is intaking 2100 calories per day, then that person will be non-poor. And this is the poverty line. This is the point. If you lie below 2400 calories per day in rural areas or 2100 calories per person per day in urban areas, if you lie below this point, you will be poor, and if you are above this point, you will be non-poor. So poverty line means a point, cut-off point, which divides people between poor and non-poor category. Now next question arises, why average calorie requirement is different in rural and urban areas? You can simply say that why average calorie requirement in rural areas is more than urban areas. It is 2400 in rural areas and 2100 in urban areas. Why is this difference? Then the simple reason behind this is, since people living in rural areas engage themselves in more physical work, they are doing more physical work. That is why calorie requirements in rural areas are considered to be higher than urban areas. This was one method through which you can categorize or you can find out how many people are living below poverty line in India. That is average calorie intake. There is another method through which you can categorize people between poor and non-poor. That is the monetary expenditure per capita needed for buy these calories requirements in terms of food grains etc. Now in order to intake these minimum calories 2400 and 2100 per person per day, right, in order to intake these calories, you need to buy food grains. How much are you spending on buying food grains in order to intake this minimum requirement of calories? This is the another method, and on the basis of these calculation, we found out that for the year 2011-12, the poverty line for a person was fixed at rupees 816 per month for the rural areas and rupees 1000 for the urban areas. Now you see, calorie intake requirements were more in rural areas, but now if we talk about expenditure spending, then it is higher in urban areas. The simple reason behind is, despite less calorie requirement in urban areas, the higher amount for urban areas has been fixed because high prices of many essential products in urban centers. In rural areas, you can afford or you can produce your own food grains. You don't have to spend this much on food grain, but in urban areas you have to spend a lot on getting or buying essential goods of life. In this way, in the year 2011-12, a family of 5 members living in rural areas and earning less than about rupees 4080 per month will be below the poverty line. That means if in a family there are 5 members and in total they are spending less than 4000, they will be poor. And if they are spending more than 4000 in a month, they will be non-poor. Now let's talk about this type of requirement in case of urban areas. If a similar family having 5 members are living in urban areas, the requirement is rupees 5000 per month. That means if they are spending less than 5000 a month, they are poor, and if they are spending above 5000 rupees, they will be non-poor. So 5000 is the poverty line, that is the point, cut-off point in urban areas for a family having 5 members. Now dear students, next question arises, how did we find these cut-off points, these poverty line figures like 5000 rupees per month in urban areas family and rupees 4080 rupees of families who are living in rural areas? How did we simply get these figures? Then I must tell you that in India, the poverty line is estimated periodically, normally every 5 years. And around every 5 years, surveys are organized. Who organize survey? That is NSSO. NSSO stands for National Sample Survey Organization. That means NSSO is an organization which conducts surveys through which they find out poverty line, the cutoff point, right? However, this was the case of India. Till now you have just made comparison between people living in India who are poor and who are non-poor. But now we are going to compare among people living in different countries, like for making comparisons between people living in developing countries. For this, many international organizations have recommended poverty line, like the World Bank. The World Bank uses a uniform standard for the poverty line. Minimum availability of the equivalent of $1 per person per day. That means if you want to compare person living in India and person who is living in Bangladesh who is poorer, then you can simply say that if the person is spending $1 per day, that person will be non-poor, and if he is spending lesser than $1, then that person will be poor in both the countries. So this is the global poverty line used by World Bank in order to make comparisons between people living in different countries. Now dear students, let's think about one more question. That is, what do you think would be the minimum necessary level in your locality? Suppose you people are living in the posh area of your city then your minimum necessary level will be different from the people who are living in the outskirts of your city, in the slums, right? People who are living in slums, managing their meal will consider them non-poor if they are able to afford good quality food, good quality education, healthcare facilities, sanitation. They will be non-poor. And if you are living in the posh area, then you will see that if you are not having luxury car and rest all of them are having, then you will be considered the person who is not having minimum necessary level. Therefore, we can simply summarize that minimum necessary level varies depending on the person to person, region to region, gender to gender, and many other criterias are there. So this was all about poverty line. Now have a minute to look at these two slides so that you can write down the important points regarding poverty line in your notebooks. Read these points carefully, write in your notebooks, and learn them from your notebooks. Now let's move further and learn about poverty estimates. Now I'll show you few tables, few graphs through which you will able to find out that is there a change in the poverty or is there a decrease in the number of people who are living below poverty line in India. What was the poverty ratio when we got independent, and now what is the population of India who are still poor? Actually, from these figures you will find out that there is a substantial decline in poverty ratios in India, that the number of people living in poverty in 1993-94 was much higher as compared to the present ratio of poverty in India. First of all, let's talk about how many people were living below poverty line in 1993-94. Then you can simply see in the year 1993-94 poverty ratio was 45% approximately, that 45% of the population of India was living below poverty line in 1993-94. And if we see into detail, we can categorize these 45% into rural poor people and urban poor people. As compared to urban areas in 1993-94, poverty can be more seen in rural areas, that is 50% as compared to 31.8% of urban areas. Likewise, you can see number of poor living in rural areas are quite higher as compared to number of people living in urban areas under poverty, that is 74.5 millions as compared to 328.6 millions of rural people. This was the data related to the year 1993-94. Now let's talk about the year 2004-2005. You can yourself find out that there has been a significant decrease in the poverty ratio. That is, in 2004-2005, poverty ratio has been reduced from 45% to 37.2%. And you can yourself analyze that measures have been taken by the government in order to reduce the population under poverty. And let's talk in detail the people of rural areas living under poverty, which was 50% in 1993-94, and now it has been reduced to 41.8% in the year 2004-05. Likewise, there has been reduction from 31% to 25% in urban areas. And you can look at the number of poor living in urban areas are still the same, and even more than, from 74 millions to 80 millions, and number is quite similar in case of rural areas. This was the year 2004-05. Now let's talk about the most recent year, that is 2011-12. In 2011-12, the proportion of people below poverty line further came down to about 21.9%. So you can yourself analyze that from 50% or 45% in 1993-94, the ratio has been decreased to 21% in 2011-12. That means in just 2 decades. And if this trend continues, people below poverty line may come down to less than 20% in the next few years. And if we look at the poverty ratio in rural areas, then it's nearly half. From 50%, it has been reduced to 25.7% in 2011-12. And same is the case with urban areas, from 31 to 13%. And there has been a remarkable change in the number of people who are poor in rural and urban areas from 1993-94 to 2011-12. But concern is, although the percentage of people living under poverty declined in the earlier 2 decades, but the number of poor declined from 407 millions in 2004-07 to 269 millions in 2011-12, with an average annual decline of just 2.2% during 2004-05 to 2011-12. The efforts that our government is putting, and we are getting good education and other basic facilities, this percentage should be quite high, which is just 2.2%, right? So more efforts are to be put in order to achieve the target of elimination of poverty in India. So these are the poverty estimates, like poverty ratios. How much poverty was in India in year 2093-94, in 2004 to 2005, and the year 2011-12. So these are the numbers that you people are supposed to memorize. Not each of these, but majority of these, right? So this was all the poverty estimates. Dear students, first of all, we talked about poverty line, that is the point that divides the people between poor and poor category. Then we talked about poverty estimates, that poverty ratio has been decreased from 45% in 1993-94 to 21.9% in 2011-12. Students, we were about to include one more topic in today's video, that was vulnerable groups, but due to lengthy video we are going to study this topic in our next video lesson. Till then, keep revising and don't forget to keep proper record of worksheet and answer keys. Thank you so much.